Welcome to Tales from the Quater. I am your host, Paul, and Alan Moore is an interesting character in comic books. His most famous works of Watchmen, The Killing Joke, V for Vendetta, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, and From Hell are all, from what I've noticed, hailed as masterworks of the craft, and for good reason. He is probably one of the most well-known comic creators, and in my experience is hailed right alongside the Marvel trinity of Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, and Steve Ditko. Few people who start dipping their toe into comics can really start without at least hearing about Alan Moore's influence on the whole of comics. Heck, Watchmen there is used as one of the works to showcase the end of the Bronze Age of comics and the start of the Dark Age, and for valid reason. But today, I'm not looking at one of his most well-known masterworks. Today, we are taking a look at Top 10, Number 3 from America's Best Comics. This was written by Alan Moore, art by Gene Ha and Zander Cannon, lettering by Todd Klein, and colors by Wildstorm FX. Why am I snagging a seemingly random issue from early in the run in Top 10? Well, because I can. I have no context for the world. I have no idea what happened previously. Not thoroughly, at least. All I know is this one issue. It's all I found in a quarter bin. So, let's blindly run into the void and start by taking a look at this cover. Gene Ha's cover for this issue, in my mind, is interesting. We have not Johnny Five getting kicked by a cowgirl who is being restrained by someone else as they fall on a third humanoid being. A don't dead open inside door saying to disarm prisoners looms behind them. And as a minor heads up, this does arguably happen in the pages of the book proper. Knowing nothing about this series, other than it has Alan Moore's name on the cover, I'm left impressed by the artwork, and I couldn't pass it up when I saw it in a quarter bin. Not that a name I like and decent art on the cover could convince me to buy just about anything, without even considering whether it could be good or not. Well, I only spent 50 cents on this, thank God. We are given probably the most interesting way of using Ant-Man's powers I've yet to hear about, as we're walked through a fantastic voyage autopsy. We are then given our issue title, Internal Affairs, as we meet a couple other characters in Not Hawkgirl and Not Kitty Pryde. Now, I'll take a second here because Wikipedia is a thing, and well, on my first read through, that's where I went looking. Alan Moore's Top 10 is set in a superhero world, and the titular 10 is the number of the focal point precinct. It's a bunch of cops. In this city, that is home to almost exclusively supers, kaiju, talking dogs in robo-suits, actual sentient robots. Comics are weird. But the thing of note here is that there are loads of characters. And while I don't have a fancy ding-dong sound effect, I do have a text guy, and he's going to ever so kindly place an arrow next to them, next to a character whenever I say their name. If you do get lost, don't worry, there is Wikipedia, but be warned, you could fall down a bit of a rabbit hole looking at this series. I know I did. Twice. Okay. So twice to the 5th power just while working on this version of the script. Happy now? From our medical examiner, Micromaid, we learned that this appears to be part of a string of murders that seems to happen once every year, and Jackie Phantom and Peregrine discuss possible help from others in the precinct, but the two most likely to help them are, well, the last I heard from Sin, the case was hardly what you'd call alive and kicking. Then our cover image comes right back into play, as we have a cowgirl kicking some robo chick in the chest. Now, honestly, because as you've probably noticed, the scans aren't mine, but I do have the physical issue. I looked at this side by side, and it really feels like Gene Ha drew the cover from a different angle from what we see in the panel, which does cause some oddities with perspective. On the cover, Toy Box is holding the attacker's arms as she falls on Girl 1, and the attacker kicks Armageddon in the chest. Inside the book, Girl 1 is further back from Toy Box, and as such isn't going to be sat upon. And because our camera angle is different, we can actually see Armageddon's head instead of just her shoulder nuke and twin Gatling guns as she potentially falls on synesthesia. I think I smell some Teen Spirit. Definitely smells like Teen Spirit. Anyway, what follows next is a series of plot continuation scenes. Hyperdog talks down Armageddon. Then he and Girl 1 have a setup for more plot in a few pages. Boots. Yes, seriously, that is her super name. Marta Boots Wesson. Blame Alan Moore. At your own risk. Boots talks to Synesthesia and King Peacock for a bit before calling for her lawyers. We cut to Dust Devil and Shock-Headed Pete to go wake up Spaceman, inadvertently waking up his friend and housemaid Tanya, the intelligent telepathic Russian space chimp. Even the wiki doesn't explain that one well. If you really want to know why it's like that, a literal wizard wrote this comic. So yes, a wizard did it, applies at all times. I would have to read everything before and after this issue to even begin to understand half of the things that the wiki just leaves unanswered or vaguely hints at. We go outside to see Shockhead being racist towards a robot. It's a thing. And a group of ne'er-do-wells who have graffitied the cop's car, leading to Spaceman to show you why you don't piss off a hungover Russian telepath. They get run off the road by Blindshot the Zen Cabbie. A wizard did it. They're okay. And we see Toy Box again. After that, we go into the character plot set up with Hyperdog a few pages earlier. Hyperdog is colorblind and as such does not see the camouflage work that is constantly shifting around on Girl 1's body in lieu of actual clothing, making Hyperdog the only person forever aware that Girl 1 is constantly naked. Potential sexual harassment suit discussions and all amnesty from earlier in the series is set aside. It's an Alan Moore comic. You miss even one issue, and you have missed so much character work that you will have no idea what the hell's going on. Hyperdog and Spaceman go to talk to Boots. Girl on 1 wanders off on her own. Toy Box and Dust Devil head down to the cells for their own reasons. And Shockhead is off to talk to Peregrine. We meet Smacks as he talks to Gogra. Toy Box pulls Smacks away to do something else unstated, while they discuss the situation surrounding Gogra. We then get transition to Shockhead Pete talking to Peregrine in her office. Getting lost as to where the hell we are going yet? Because I am just barely hanging on. There are loads of characters in this, each with their own agency, each with obvious developed personalities. And the way this is being executed is absolutely glorious. It's kind of what you come to expect from an Alan Moore book. Shockhead is in trouble because earlier in the series he let a prostitute go who ended up becoming our headless corpse killed by Libra at the beginning of this issue. Shockhead fills in Peregrine and Jackie Phantom about the circumstances of his meeting with the dead prostitute, leading to a potential suspect in the case of the Libra killer. By the way, if you think I'm speeding through this, I'm not. I'm only on page 19 of 26. Alan Moore writes very dense books when he is given the opportunity, which, on top of other things, leads to his distaste for his comics being translated into movies. I'm trying to save my thoughts for the end of the book, so let's try to get there before my daughter graduates college. Hyperdog and Spaceman are confronted by one of Boots' lawyers about using Spaceman's powers to get any information from Boots because of what happened to Saddles in a previous issue. Sin and Peregrine go talk to their insurance salesman suspect, who was probably the last person to see our dead sex worker alive before Libra killed her. Turns out he was running around behind his wife's back, and the ensuing panic attack causes him to inflate, akin to a pufferfish or, well, an airbag, which ends up with Peregrine trapped. Jackie Phantom calls Janice the dispatcher for backup. She sends Dust Devil to tell the captain. We see Hyperdog being a prick before Dust Devil asks him where Captain Jetman is. Jetman is looking over the affidavit that Boots' lawyer Fishman has brought in to stop Spaceman from using his telepathy on Boots. And then our issue ends with Gogra's dad showing up to claim his son. And that is the end of this issue. I joked early on about a good cover and an author I like being able to get me to pick up just about any book. But there is a reason I like Alan Moore's work. He writes very dense works that are highly character driven. The only character I referenced by their rank was the captain. But Alan Moore took the time to give all of the police characters a rank. All of them have a civilian name along with their superhero name. And all of them have backstories that make sense. It's honestly quite impressive. Even this one issue of Top 10 can show Alan Moore's power. We're given a constant narrative flow that makes sense as we bounce from focal character to focal character in what at times kind of feels like the comic book equivalent of the 2-minute tracking shot from Goodfellas inside the Copacabana. It all works, it all flows, and it all makes sense. Yeah, I did some digging to find out the Libra killer and the once a year thing, but I did that while I was working on this script. When I first read this, it's one of those, okay, I need to know more because this is well written, this is good. But I dropped in the middle of the arc. You don't need specifically to look at the wiki. I did because it gave me more information to help write a review. But sadly, this is the only issue of Top 10 that I have. If I had more, I'd gladly turn this into my series slot. Without question. But this is all I have. However, while that is the only issue of Top 10 I have, it's not the end of my look at police-themed comic books. You see, next time we're heading over to DC. We're going to be taking a look at the main man. And probably the first thing I read the main man in. A one-shot from the early 90s. It's a parody, yes. But honestly, how can you top the gloriousness that is RoboCop? Except if one were to add in the main man and turn it into LoboCop.
And of course, as always, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe, because it is your subscriptions that allow us at Those Darn Hooligans to know that we actually matter in this world.